But what also is concerning in the Scandinavian data, which I was sharing with you, is that when you start mixing them, that even went higher. So if you give, like, we're going to give two, you're going to get Pfizer and then a Moderna or something like that, that data was more concerning. The odds ratios were higher in those.
In 2020, when we had the massive assault with COVID-19, we didn't have an increase in stillbirth. That stillbirth rate actually dropped down to 5.73 from about 5.83 per thousand births, which was the aggregate of the 3 prior years.
So again, in your field, you didn't see that impact in terms of health outcomes from COVID from the disease? Only till the vaccine was rolled out?
That's correct. In 2020, the massive assault of COVID-19 and everybody, including my pregnant woman, I did not see this rise. The rise was not seen until after the vaccine. And I have vital statistics of our national vital statistics to prove that.
It's blank on
Boom.
both sides. And
There it is.
It says intentionally blank on it.
That's the data that pharmacists and physicians are basing on giving the injections outside of mainstream media recommendations.
I would like to make this point for anyone who is considering getting their children vaccinated. We've had a hard lesson learned. We've had soldiers who have gotten vaccinated, who've been destroyed. You've heard victims up here who've been destroyed by this vaccine. An EUA product means you have no legal recourse. You could give that vaccine to your child, they could drop dead the next day or end up in a wheelchair like Maddie Gray. And you have no ability to sue the pharmaceutical companies, just like my soldiers. They said it was FDA approved, yet they have not produced any FDA approved vaccines with corresponding lot numbers. And it is the lot number off of that vial. It doesn't matter if the EUA product and the FDA approved product have exactly the same ingredients in that vial. It is the lot number that corresponds to either an EUA product or an FDA approved product that gives you the ability to legal recourse. And once this vaccine was put on the childhood vaccine schedule, the pharmaceutical companies have complete and permanent indemnity from legal recourse should anything happen to you or your children. And our soldiers have been forced to take an EUA product, even though it is illegal to mandate service members be injected with an EUA product.
The excess mortality has shifted so much so that it's pretty phenomenal what you see here in the charts before you. This is not my data, this is the Society of Actuaries. In 2021, in ages 25 through 64, the employed people of our nation covered under group life, they experienced a 40% excess mortality. As quoted by a CEO of an insurance company, just a 10% increase in excess mortality is a 3 standard deviation event or a once in a 200-year flood, so 40 is off the charts. What's interesting about this is that the general overall population experienced 32% excess mortality. This group life policyholder subset is much healthier in general than the overall population, as done by previous studies. They experience mortality 30 to 40% that of the general population. So something flipped in 2021 by 8 points. Go on to the next slide, please. For disability, this is the next data set is the U.S. Department of Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's pretty simple here. We saw disability take off in May of 2021 above averages. On Wall Street, we follow statistical deviations. There was this 3 sigma event, 3 standard deviation, rate of change year over year. And what we found particularly interesting was that the employed of our country experienced a 26% increase in the rate of disability versus the general population, which experienced 11%. To put some numbers on this, we're being very conservative on our start date. The number is probably much higher, but 1.2 million additional Americans in the employed segment of our population left the workforce or didn't leave the work, they got disabled. That is the size of the state of Wyoming and Vermont combined. They've disappeared from the labor force. So if you're seeing labor shortages all around the country, this might be one of the explanations.
You see something like 10 to 15% excess mortality continuing as recently as the past few months. And so, that's very troubling. But if we roll to the next slide, the senator asked us to show just the one chart that tells the entire story. This is that chart. The UK government, until this summer, was reporting a data series that showed the relative mortality rates for the vaccinated and unvaccinated by the number of doses of the vaccine. We've done what we think is really professional work with this, and we think it simplifies down to a conclusion that says that through the last available data set, the people in the UK who took the vaccine have a 26% higher mortality rate. The people who are under the age of 50 who took the vaccine now have a 49% higher mortality rate. And worst of all, the people who only took one dose of the vaccine have approximately 145% worse mortality rate. That last data point is on its face confusing, especially because it seems like there's more and more, it just doesn't make a ton of sense unless you realize that what's going on with this really is that the people who took the first dose in the United States, that's about 12% of people, but then stopped taking any other doses. Those people, through their choice to stop, disproportionately the ones who were harmed. And so what we're concluding is that if you happen to be an unlucky person who was in some fashion even moderately injured, with a minor injury, and decided not to continue, the statistics, the best statistics we have, show that you're going to have, at least through today, maybe it'll get better, and obviously we're all here because we're hoping to find treatments and cures and screening and interventions, but if that doesn't happen, we have to assume that this is now the baseline. There's going to be 145% higher mortality. And if you were to take these numbers and just apply them to the United States, that ends up being something like 600,000 excess deaths per year in the United States from this higher vaccine-induced mortality.